Welcome to the All Ambient podcast, where we dig into the creative process, we hear untold stories, and we explore the minds of some brilliant people behind some of the finest ambient music out there. My name is Mike Graff. I make music as Dear Gravity. I'm really happy to be here together with you. We have another music news episode for you. Myself, Kirk, Ben, and Marshall dig into the Grammys. Of course, the Grammys, the most prestigious award currently in the music industry, but perhaps maybe outdated? Are there some things that need to change? Are there some genres that need to be acknowledged? And of course, completely biased on the ambient and cinematic side of things, but very interesting conversation about if the Grammys have kept up with where the music industry is now, especially with the rising trend of independent artists gaining the momentum that they do, but of course, almost completely locked out of the voting process for the Grammys by the Recording Academy. So we explore it from a lot of angles. You're not going to want to miss it. Before we do so, really glad you're here. If you haven't joined All Ambient on Discord yet, make sure you do so. Link is in the show notes. You do not want to miss out on that conversation. A lot of people connecting with each other, getting to answer each other's questions and build some cool community. It's a really great family that's growing there. But also, there's great conversations happening around the podcast topics, and you can even ask questions and give feedback for what you want to see happen in future episodes or who you want to see in future episodes. So please come join us. That'd be great. Also, make sure to stop by all-ambient.com. Of course, information on how you can license the music that you're hearing from any of these artists, which is a great resource for creators, for film and video, for all that. But also, there are some great things that we're going to be rolling out in the coming weeks, coming months, some new developments that, not to be an over-promise, under-deliver situation, but we're anticipating great things on how these can be valuable resources for a lot of people in a couple different camps. So I will stop teasing that at some point and they will just be a reality, but make sure to just be up to speed on all things at all-ambient.com and join All Ambient on Discord. But enough housekeeping. Let's dig right into today's music news episode. Here we go, folks. The music news episode is happening now, for sure. And I am joined by three brilliant people. They happen to be Ben Tatlow, Kirk Smith, and Marshall Usinger. Surprise, surprise. These are the three guys, and we're so glad that we're all together. Guys, welcome. Good to see you. How's it all going?
Yeah, it's going well. Good to be here. Good to see you guys too.
Amazing. We talked a little bit about it off recording, but wow, you guys are upping your studios look great. Your spaces look great. This is I think the video side is just it's happening. So well done. Well done. A round of applause to
good job,
everybody.
Good job, everybody.
Good job.
It's been cool.
Love it. Seriously. Well, maybe we should just not mince any words and dig right in. Music news. This one might be a little left of center, but we're going to go for it. So I have prepared a little statement and we shall dig in after that. This music news episode is titled, Do the Grammys Need to Change? It's kind of a fascinating thing when you think about it. So the Grammys are, as of now, 2025, like the biggest, most prestigious award in the music industry in the world right now. The fascinating thing is that when you look at the number of artists that are actually qualified to be voted or recommended by someone in the Recording Academy and then, approved, how does it go? I need to get this right. You need to be recommended by a Recording Academy member and then deemed eligible by the whole group. So there's like a little voting process. The number of people who actually meet that requirement is of course, very small compared to the rest of the music industry. But in this day and age, with streaming exploding the way that it is, I mean, I don't know if you guys saw one of Spotify's news releases recently, or they had a whole bunch of kind of like infographic points that they emailed out. But the number of indie artists that are growing in like the sizable streaming, where like getting billions of streams, is growing at an astronomical rate. Like the indie artist is just as sizable as the major artist at this point. But of course, the indie artist is ineligible to be considered for something like a Grammy, which is kind of my point number one, is that while the Grammys is, prestigious, it's also missing like a huge chunk of people in the music industry that up until, a handful of years ago, maybe there was more reason to not fully acknowledge independent music. But now that everybody has access to everything and independent music is just as in the forefront as major label releases, I don't know if that argument stands anymore. So that's point number one, is I think that indie artists, there needs to be a way figured out to kind of maybe play with that a little bit. Number two, though, is if you look at how much music has grown over the past, just again, with the advent of streaming and the genres and the subgenres and like the mainstay people who have really anchored those and helped grow those genres to what they are and scenes in all these different cities and continents everywhere. So that's exploding. And I love how music is continuing to evolve and take shape and form. But the categories in the Grammy world have basically stayed the same for the past number of decades. Like there's little updates here and there, in addition of like, best metal recording, not just best rock recording, or best electronic this as opposed to what, like there's been little additions, but I haven't seen acknowledging like the massive explosion of stuff that's happening in EDM. We are extremely biased, but I would say the explosion of stuff happening in the ambient cinematic world. There really are only a couple categories that even if we were to qualify for being nominated, I believe the categories are best instrumental composition, which is like 5 songs, not even albums, but like songs. And then there's some new age in there somewhere, which is really not even a great way to classify what we do, but that would be it. That's like it. You're one and done. So when you think of how music has grown, I don't know if I see the Grammys as having kept pace with the growing genre splitting of what's happening in the worldwide music scene. And I know you can only do so many awards. I'm not asking for an award. I just think that it is interesting that the Grammys really haven't changed while the music industry is greatly changing, certainly on the rise of the indie player, and then also just the rise of genre after genre after genre that breaks the mold of pop, rock, alternative, country, jazz, Latin, like we could name a handful of that. And those are important genres, but I don't think that they encompass a large percentage of what people are listening to. I honestly, I was looking through, kind of my recently searched and recently listened. I don't even think half of what I've listened to recently would even be considered qualifying for one of those genres, or for certainly for someone who could be eligible to be nominated. So yeah, I'm not trying to make a case for me or for us. I mean, that would be crazy cool. But like the bigger point is, do the Grammys need to change and kind of keep up with the times with everything else that's going on in the industry? So there we go. How would you like to see the Grammys change, whether it's on the genre side, whether it's on the growing impact of independent artists, or maybe you hate everything I just said and you want it to stay the way it is. You don't want your cheese moved at all. You just want everything the way it is right now, and you just want to keep making your music in your lane, and that's great. You can defend that all you want, but there it is. I leave it to you, with the Grammys recently being upon us and Beyonce earning her, country album Grammy and all that fun stuff. We don't even have to talk about that. Yeah, I'm curious what you guys have to say on if the Grammys needs to do a little bit of updating.
Mm-hmm. My initial thought, just upon a quick reflection, is I would maybe be more on the side. I think this is a very interesting point, Michael. So good on you.
Well, thanks. Well, and remind yourself that if you say the wrong thing, we'll probably be blacklisted from this for life. So just
exactly.
If you want any shot, just watch what you say. But besides that, go for it. Yep.
I think my initial feeling is like I don't know if it's a push back or a push forward, but I would be more inclined to want to keep the Grammys in the form of how they are in some sense. And I think my thought there would be, there are, the Grammys before streaming, and I don't think streaming is necessarily going anywhere, but everything that goes into the awards and those artists, whether it be, physical album sales and everything they do to make that happen, which is a vast spectrum for a lot of those artists, and maybe how much they tour, or, what kind of, how hard they had to work to get where they are. Like sometimes that happens with, virtually not a lot of work. And sometimes, Sabrina Carpenter has been making records for like over a decade and no one knew who she was till, less than 2 years ago. And I just feel so like we all do, I feel so saturated in this world of streaming and everything that is like there to keep up with, and trends that change, and these artists that I don't know about. I probably know some of them who are getting billions of streams, right? Who are independent, which is amazing.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like, I don't know, I think it would be, I think like for me, just a cooler idea would be for that to sort of evolve into its own thing, maybe where there could be some kind of recognition for artists who are, killing it in the streaming world, and maybe some sort of, it's not going to be the Grammys, but I'm thinking out loud, of course, but
yeah, the Hammies.
I just, things are changing so much that I feel like
a dad joke smile from a couple guys there. That's good. It's good.
Grammys.
There's the Grammys. Yeah, I just want there to be God, let's have some sense of I'm not even going to say I want to say purity, but you know what I mean? It's not like the Grammys are this thing that is just I'm sure they're not clean how they happen and all that sort of thing, but I just want something to kind of be left untouched at this point. You know what I mean? It's just all this other stuff is happening, and I would like there to be something. It's like, hey, we're recognizing these, global scale, fairly, massive artists. And oftentimes me personally, I can disagree personally with certain things, or I have my hopes for what records are going to win, but I can be like, okay, I can see kind of why it went this or this way. So I like there being that. So that would be my initial take.
Yeah, love it. It's interesting how, and they didn't quite time out exactly the same, but how, the Oscars as well and the Grammys, I think one of the things that just kind of lights me up a little bit about this whole thing is that it felt like the Grammys used to be kind of a real encapsulation of almost the entirety of the scene, right? Because everyone was going to the same stores, everyone was listening to the same songs on the radio. There was kind of this condensed pool of what was actually going on. And then same with the Oscars, there was, only streaming was online, video streaming was not even remotely a thing. So it was, you go to the theater or you go to the local, video store to rent a movie. And so just the putting all the eyeballs on a much smaller scale, it felt like the celebration of the Grammy or the Oscar was you just kind of knew what was going on, I think. And I'm not trying to sound old. I understand that, that there's probably just more stuff that I need to listen to, more stuff I need to watch and all that. But set that aside. I think that just with the advent of the way that, the internet has allowed all of the music, all the movies to fly to every corner of the globe, it makes it more difficult to have this prestigious thing that says this is really the best in the industry when there's just so much more industry to speak of at this point rather than, the little tiny group. So that's that doesn't mean that cross section that they have is any less talented. Kind of what you were saying, they're still just killing it. But are we missing the point on people who could be considered, and not in, I don't want to turn this into any sort of there are certain people who should be considered for certain reasons or whatever. I'm not trying to turn it into that. Just literally the amount of stuff that's being put out. Yeah, where does the line get drawn? But I do very much hear you, and there is a sweetness to the way that they've done it. I get it, and there is cool celebration there. But yeah, we'll keep going. This is good.
Yeah.
Good.
I like what you're saying, Marshall. I agree in kind of with the majority of it. I think from my side, I think I would love to see an evolution rather than a complete kind of, rewrite of how they do things. I would love for there to be maybe a reassessment of the genres that are popular today. And, there will be a few, I'm not talking about adding, 30, 40 subgenres of different things, but, there's probably 3 or 4 significant genres that right now are being missed. And I wouldn't want to say exactly which ones they would be, but ambient music for sure, ambient neoclassical, that kind of cinematic vibe that we're in. that is a huge genre that is really not represented right now. So I would love to see something like that be represented, even if it is still just essentially a major label thing. But I guess my second piece would be, I would personally, and I think probably we would all love for there to be an indie pathway into it, not to kind of rewrite how the whole thing is done, but so that there is a way in which indie artists can be represented as part of the bigger picture. So exactly how that, I'm not an expert with how everything is pulled together, but I think those two things for me would be kind of a really nice nod to the streaming era that we're in, and the genres that are popular today. So that's kind of where I sit on it.
Yeah. That makes me think back to, it's not quite apples to apples, but when we were talking about AI data sets and releasing our music to be considered by the licensing companies that are building AI data sets. Kirk, I think you were the one who said it, but it was the idea of like when one asks what stuff is included in the data set, like how do we know if it's any good? And for you to just kind of lay it out like, well, at some point the AI is trusting these, like known companies that have said yes to these artists and saying you are kind of the gatekeeper in a sense. Like we want to use the stuff that you have said yes to. And so maybe in a sense the Grammys is still functioning in that way where like if it's really mostly like these major and like a few kind of subsidiaries of that, but it's really sort of the gatekeeping of who makes it into that circle just being those who have been said yes to by the majors. And I understand that, and I'm not like jealous of that or anything, but I think that it does miss the entirety of it. And yes, then it just leads me right back to the same thing that you just said, where it's like, I don't know how to do it. How do you open the pathway? So yeah, that's an interesting point for sure. Kirk, what you got?
I have thoughts, I think, but I love everything everybody's saying. I don't know enough about the process to really speak authoritatively.
Mm-hmm.
And correct me if I'm wrong, but I feel like even the Grammys themselves, it's a lot longer of a day than just the part that makes it on television, where there's a lot of categories and awards and things that aren't necessarily on prime time, but
they do not show on primetime best reggae recording of the year. You are correct. Yes.
Right, and stuff like that. And so I have no idea how much of some of these other genres might actually be represented in the Grammys, but not necessarily represented to the public, to where someone got a Grammy, but there's no coverage of it. There's no real, there's no splash other than that person themselves going out to their audience and saying, hey, we did it. We brought home a Grammy, which is great, but it's not going to be on the news feed the next day or whatever.
Right.
But part of the idea is like, if we were to even keep opening up, the Grammys would be like a, week-long event. Well, it's probably already a week-long event with all the pre-game warm-ups and all the things and all the, So it's like, how long would the Grammys become? How big would they become if we, divided all the genres and all the things?
Yeah.
And so it feels overwhelming. That's part of it. But then also, I feel like some genres have kind of taken it upon themselves to be like, well, let's just make a thing. We're going to make our own version and recognize within our own scene people that we appreciate and love and are inspired by, kind of do something like that. And I feel like that kind of maybe something like that could maybe wave a flag to places like a Grammy and be like, oh, like, okay, these guys, they love each other. They believe in their music, and it's clearly showing numbers with people responding to the awards and voting and all that kind of stuff. And it's like, oh, maybe we need to adjust, I feel like there's probably some, I don't know. I don't know how the evolution of hip hop and the Grammys took place, but I know that hip hop had a lot of their own awards and kind of did that. And so I don't know if that affected the ease of transition into, Grammy world and all that kind of stuff.
Right.
So that's another thought is like, just genres taking it upon themselves to do that if they want. And then I feel like for the most part,
I'm not laughing at that.
Go ahead.
Remind me to I want you to keep going, but I have a really stupid brainstorming idea for that, but I don't want to stop here at all.
Fantastic. The ambies. But the other thing is, I feel like there is a pathway to any artist to, if a Grammy really is your goal, and you feel like you have the music and you're starting to get the numbers and those kind of things, and that really is a goal, then it's not impossible to kind of become a voting member and then do the thing and then do the thing and campaign. But when I think, at the end of the day, when I think about the Grammys, they're filled with amazing people who've created awesome things and broke barriers and inspired lots of people. But it feels like a campaign, like a political campaign, or like makes me think of like high school when everybody was trying to be like class president or like all that kind of stuff. It's like, sure, they could be great
to succeed.
Yeah. Well, it feels, there's a part of it that feels like a popularity contest, but it's also this part where people are trying to celebrate music and be inspired by each other and get their music out there. So it's like you can't knock it.
Yeah.
But I think a lot of indie people are probably kind of like, it's not on my radar. It's not really what I want to do with my time, because I feel like it probably is a fairly large time commitment to kind of cross through that threshold if you want to do, unless something like literally becomes like a viral thing and then the wave is starting and you're like, well, do I get on the wave or do I just, keep doing my thing?
Yeah.
And so, I mean, those are kind of my thoughts. Is I think there is a path to it for just about anybody who really wants to go for it. But it feels like a political campaign that you have to really strategize and do and go for. And the music has to be there, obviously. But then I think people can either create their own version of the Grammys and try to kind of ring the bell, wave the flag for their genre, and it could help bring them into the fold, if that was what wanted to be accomplished.
Absolutely. Man, well, and that's kind of what you were saying there. I know recently we talked about the idea of those who are pursuing, label representation, whether it's indie or up through the majors. If part of that pursuit is to soothe this inner lack of confidence in what you are doing, and you literally need somebody to tell you, it's like this affirmation, like, oh yes, now I am a quote professional or whatever, and you just need that label to feel that, as opposed to just deciding like, no, this is who I am. I could see how pursuing a label like Grammy nominated or Grammy winning could very much be the exact same thing. Like I need to identify as that, so that when people see that, they're like, oh, well, he's legit, and that the only way that people were to consider you that way would be if the Recording Academy deemed you as such, and that's a slippery slope, man, because then you start to believe all sorts of things that aren't true about all that. So I'm fully on board with everything you were saying, Kirk, about the evolution and then like kind of just making our own way. I was thinking, I don't know if you guys, I've only done it a couple times in life. I've happened to be out in California, kind of the hub of a lot of the Oscar and Grammy activity. But I've happened to be out in California around the like the early Oscar and Grammy season. So I believe I'm not gonna get my timing right, but it's like there's a lot of billboards that are out there that just say for your consideration. So it's the idea of like, take note of this show or of the movie, of this album, like for your consideration. And there's a lot of digital billboards these days, so it's not just the same wrap on a big old wooden post for the next couple weeks, but like they cycle through every 10 seconds. I would love to make a whole series of digital billboard ads that just say like, for your consideration, best ambient album, Antarctic Wastelands, Worlds Collide, or or we do like for all, like for us to just like pummel them with a whole bunch of Echoes, Blue, Slow Echo, just whatever, but just like speak into the world that, hey, you should probably pay attention to ambient. And there's something kind of tongue-in-cheek about that. I don't know if I'm like fully ready to spend the hundreds of thousands of dollars that would probably wind up costing us, but there's a level of
couple more Sleep Scenes albums, Mike, and you'll be
let's
there.
Let's go for your consideration. Sleep Scenes.
It's same for volume 6 and 7.
But yeah, there's an interesting thing in there where the idea of like, well, let's kind of make the case for it a little bit. It would be interesting to watch the instrumental world, to watch that entire subsector of neoclassical, cinematic, ambient, drone, like all of that, to find a home, to grow beyond, you know, the best instrumental composition category or the best new age album category. Because that's, we all know that doesn't even do that justice. I think I remember listening to a podcast to someone a couple years ago now, but they wound up, they're an ambient-ish artist, and they wound up making their way onto the best new age recording list. Like, they got nominated, and they just identified that as like, I probably have the best shot of this one because it's not as cutthroat and no one really knows what that category is about, so I'm just going to go over that one. So it was almost more of like a strategic play as opposed to an actual representation of a certain style of music. Yeah, let's go. Let's get ambient recordings on the radar of the Recording Academy. And
I remember when Apple, when we used to have to use trying to set up your stuff with Apple to go to the distributors, like New Age was the only kind of like that. Ambient wasn't even a part of the drop down menu, you know? And so it's like you had to choose like either New Age or like alternative, like experimental. And you're like, okay, like that's my, or alternative New Age, like we're the new Age.
It's just this question mark. Yeah.
Dang it. Like, you know, but, and now it's clearly it's a choice. It's a thing.
Yeah.
And so I even see what Apple's doing. And I saw a couple things that Zane Lowe was doing. He kind of put out his little ambient playlist that had a few ambient artists. And now I just saw he did some kind of interview with Brian Eno. So it's like, he's clearly switched on to ambient music. And so I think that could be a good sign as far as, you know, and we talked about the button before, but it's like guys that are high up in the industry understand it. And so it makes me brainstorm. It's like, okay, well, if you got a guy like Zane and you got a guy like Brian and you got a couple independent labels, why don't we put together a pitch to do an ambient thing, whether it's an Apple Music, you know, ambient award, or AAA or whatever, you know, and do something like that. You know, that's like, okay, well now, because he clearly gets it and he knows the roots of the scene and where it's going. And so it's like, oh, okay, that could be a thing. And then who knows, in 2 years, it could be an actual category.
Yeah. I love that.
I don't know Zane's number, so I'm not going to reach out, but I guess I could DM
Zane,
him or something.
So you can reach us at podcast@all-ambient.com, and we would love to hear from you for sure.
Tag him
in the meantime
in the show post.
I love the thoughts, you guys, and I think we're all coming from it in the place of course, honoring all the incredible artists everywhere in every genre and not taking away from that at all. But you know, you look at the continued momentum and success of people in genres that explore outside of Grammy world and in you know, label deals that are outside of what the Grammy world considers, and you find a lot of really great people doing a lot of really great things. Now, what I don't think is that there has to be recognition, kind of what we were saying before. I'm you know, beating a dead horse here, but we don't need recognition in order to feel that there's something valid with our artistry, or that this is impacting people, that it is something that is meaningful to offer into the world. There's not a label, like an actual label from a record label or from an award or anything like that would all of a sudden just make that great. And it wasn't great before, but now it's legit. That's just nonsense. But at the same time, I think subconsciously it can be easier to believe that those sorts of things really matter. And honestly, like I just, with the growing momentum of the ambient world, I think it could be really cool to start seeing what happens in the space of it joining, you know, the other leagues of that. But time will tell. We'll find out. Please let me know what
Yeah, and
album
if
you guys each want considered for our Billboard run, though. And
yeah, I just add, I guess one thing, which is just from a kind of listener's perspective, I do think that kind of spotlighting some like, ambient music, which, maybe it's the best of the year or whatever. Like I've always really appreciated when Bandcamp, for example, do their kind of year-end ambient lists. And then there's other websites and blogs. Post Ambient Lux is one that I follow. Every year he does his kind of top, I think 100 ambient releases. And it's really cool because, and it's not for me, occasionally maybe my music is in there, but mainly it's about discovering some amazing music that I've missed that has been out of my radar, which is in there. And so, yeah, I mean, firstly, shout out to the people who are doing that because I think that's amazing. And I think it's so valuable to the community. But secondly, yeah, just in the context of the Grammys conversation, I think there's just value for listeners to have, a place where they're like, hey, these are 5, releases which are worth checking out that represent the very best of this scene. And right now, when you look at the best new age or the best instrumental albums, it's not that they're bad in and of themselves, but they're not representative of the ambient neoclassical cinematic scene as a whole. And for me, that's kind of where the miss is right now. So, yeah.
Yeah.
That's good.
Man, it's so good. Well, we'll see you guys at the Grammys. It's going to be great.
See you there.
Just get if that were to ever happen, we need to just get a big ol' Airbnb and like hang out for a handful of days and make some records in person together and all the stuff that we could have some fun, but all in time.
I'm curious if, naturally, like with the Oscars, and the Oscars specifically, not the Grammys. So naturally with the Oscars, I get, quite intrigued just to see about original score.
Mm-hmm.
Is there a Grammy that covers film music, or is it just the Oscars that covers that?
I'd have to look it up, but I'm pretty positive.
I think and if there is, it's something either that there hasn't been a lot of coverage on, kind of like what Kirk was saying, or not something that feels as easy to keep up with. And it's kind of like, to me, that's maybe an interesting separate conversation in itself, is like music is such an integral part of storytelling in film. And while that airs on the side of the Oscars, I feel like, I don't know, I want more than just one award, I guess, that covers something that has to do with film and, music and storytelling and visuals together. And a lot of that music is, cinematic or blurs, ambient and things like that. And so I just think, I don't know how much of that is involved with the Grammys, but I feel like that would be maybe an interesting way as far as, an evolution could go, where, there could be some kind of like additional, sound design or, something like that covers more than just, best score, best soundtrack, because that's
Absolutely.
very limited. That's a very like generic term to just kind of like chuck a bunch of options at, and not even like specific genres, right? It's best score could be orchestral or hybrid or ambient or whatever. So I think that might be cool, just to, if there was maybe some kind of focus that was on film and music a little bit more.
Yeah. It looks like, just from looking it up real fast, and there's probably more going on here, it looks like there is best compilation soundtrack for visual media, which is not what you were saying, but I get
Okay.
it. And
Interesting.
Then there is get this, there is a Grammy for the best score soundtrack for video games and other interactive media.
Okay.
But I don't see.
Well, that's kind of cool though, and that doesn't
cool.
That doesn't get any kind of coverage, I guess I would assume, but that's...
Video game scoring is still an itch that I am waiting to scratch. I'm not waiting for someone
that would be
to
so
approach
cool.
me. I just don't. The timing, we'll figure it out, but it would be so cool. Yeah.
Yeah, it'd be amazing.
So cool. But man, all great things. Really grateful for you guys weighing in on that. Let's wrap it there. I think we've all kind of explored it, and we shall see what happens. But Zane, just let us know when you want to talk. We'll go from there. So
The one.
Awesome. Appreciate you guys.
Cool. See ya.
Thanks again for joining us on the All Ambient podcast. This is about as shameless of a plug as it gets, but it really does help for those of you who are watching to give us a rating if you're on any podcast platform like Apple or Spotify or anything like that. On YouTube, we would love a follow, a subscribe, a like, all that fun stuff. And please leave a comment, a review, whatever is applicable to the right place that you're finding this. It really does go a long way. You don't have to make anything up by any means, but if there's some value in this podcast for you, we'd love to hear about it. We, as the All Ambient family, would love to meet you. I know it does my heart good, as well as everybody else who's involved at All Ambient. So please do so. Come back and join us next week. We got another great episode coming your way. And until then, here's hoping that this music and the hearts behind it make your day and your life that much better. Thanks.